Welcome to the Cook's Canvas, Traveling Chef. I'm your host, Linda Isaacs, and today, in this snowy day in Kentucky, we're going to be taking a break from cooking, and we're going to speak to our special guest, Sergeant Dianne Smith. Sergeant Smith here was a U.S. Army veteran who spent 22 years in the military, and what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be talking about women in the military, her experiences throughout the years, and an event we've got coming up with Empower Her. It's a women's veterans retreat that's going to be held in Winchester. So let's just dive right in, Sergeant Smith, and let's talk about your life and career in the military, how it affected you, how coming from a rural mountain community here in Kentucky, how that has made such a dynamic impact on your life, and how you inspire the women today to get out, and these beautiful women in Appalachia, how they can see parts of difference of the world by joining the military or just getting out.
Well, thank you, Linda. I appreciate having the opportunity to share this with you. So, yeah, as you said, I'm from here. I'm from Jackson County here at Sand Gap, Kentucky. And I grew up in the 70s. And back in 76 or so, when I was getting ready to graduate high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I wanted to travel and see the world, but I didn't have any money. You know, we're from an average poor family here. I wanted to go to school later, but I just really wanted to do something else. And so, but let me just say this about the Army. I had no idea there were even women in the Army at that time. Remember, that's just several years ago. And one day, a Army recruiter was in our library talking to these guys. And they were talking overside, and of course, being the nosy person I always have been, I was like, I heard him say, you can travel to Hawaii, you can go to Alaska, you can go overseas. And I thought, whoa, what is that? I went over, I said, hey, can I do this? And he gave me the look up and down. I was a skinny little girl with big, thick glasses. And he said, maybe, probably, but you've got to take a test first. So he had me take the ASVAB test, which is what people still take today. It's the vocational battery test, and kind of says what you may be good at, potential, and so on. So I took the test, and he came right back because he said, you can be anything you want to be in the Army except a mechanic. He said, you have top scores and everything, and you failed mechanics. So, but we think we've got just a job for you. Next thing I know, I'm going off to a MEP station, and they were talking to me about being in a true oxymoron, military intelligence. And I said, well, what is that? And he said, we can't tell you. I said, well, what will I do? And they said, we can't tell you. I said, oh, okay. He said, but you'll like it. You'll like it. And knowing no more than that, I signed the papers to join the Army.
So how did that, do you feel like joining the military, being a woman in the 70s, how that impact was to your mother and dad? Because typically in the Appalachian region in eastern Kentucky, women usually have set roles. You know, it's like we may work outside the home, but we work close to home. Our duties often involve motherhood, taking care of families, gardening, doing the typically women's thing that we're known for and loved for so much around Appalachia. So how did that impact your parents when you got to tell them, look, I'd signed up for the Army?
It was, my parents couldn't believe it. We didn't have anyone in our immediate family that had been in the Army. I didn't know anybody that had been in the Army, so I really didn't know anything about what I was getting into. And when I came home and said, I'm going to join the Army, and da-da-da, and my mother's like, they were like, you can't. There's not women in the Army. And I said, well, it turns out they do. And so she's like, well, what are you going to do? I said, I can't tell you. I don't know. They were dumbfounded. And I said, my dad said, well, you can go, but I don't think you're going to make it. Because you got to remember, I weighed barely 100 pounds, and I was this little girl. It was a big change and shock for my family. And when I left for basic training, I don't think anybody thought I would ever succeed at this. Probably, and I was scared to death. I had never been out of the state, never been on a plane, never been on a bus, a Greyhound bus, none of that sort of stuff. And I go away to the Army. And here's me and all these girls from all these other places, and they took everything you have away. Your name, everything. They don't call you by your name anymore. Call you private. But the upbringing that I had, my parents, have worked hard all their lives to have what they have. And taught me to work hard, so I'm not afraid of hard work. Wasn't afraid of hard work. They taught me to never quit. And I think those two things really helped me. But because basic training is all about stripping away the civilian you are and making you military. And let me tell you, that was kind of scary and rough because initially I thought, I didn't realize this was a transition from women being part of Women's Army Corps. I was there when we transitioned to the regular Army. I was then part of the first group of women to be introduced into male combat support units. My first unit, I was one of 3 women and 500 men.
Okay. Well, let's talk about letting people know about what we call WAC.
Yeah,
it was our training corps.
Sure.
Explain that because women who join the military today may or may not know what WAC is, and explain WAC in the military in the 70s.
Okay. And so initially women were separate, and each branch of the service had their own version of that. For the Army, it was WACS, the Women's Army Corps. And so when I signed the paperwork, I couldn't ship out for about 6 months because they're waiting for a class date for me. And so in that time, it transitioned from we still only trained with just women trainees, but then we did women's push-ups on your knees. It's what they said I would do. I got there. They said, well, welcome to the new Army. You're going to be transitioning male. You're going to do men's push-ups. I couldn't do a push-up. I never done a push-up in my life.
I don't think I can today.
But I learned because I couldn't keep my mouth shut. So I learned to do a lot of push-ups pretty fast. And then they said, you're going to have to qualify on an M16. I'd shot once in my life here. I've been around guns all my life. Everybody here has been, but I never hunted or any of that. And they had me M16, said, this is going to be your best friend. You're going to love it. You're going to learn how to take it apart and clean it, and you're going to learn how to kill stuff.
So for you, growing up in Jackson County and Appalachia and Eastern Kentucky, typically guns are used by men because they're hunting or protection of the land and things like that. It's not typically in a role that a woman would use the gun. Not even if you had to go out, as we say, kill a chicken to eat for dinner. You don't use a gun.
Yeah.
So then you had to step in and say, okay, they're giving me an M16, and this is what I have to do.
This is what I have to do. So they started training us with that. And you're thinking, and I'm still, as I said, I didn't know anything about the Army. Hadn't been around anyone in the Army. What I'd seen been in the movie. There's an old movie that came out with Private Benjamin with Goldie Hawn. And she goes in the Army, she has no, and she's like, where's the country club? Where's the spa? That's the Army I thought I was going into. Instead, I'm here in the foxhole with an M16 shooting a target that looks like a person. And I thought, what have I done? But that's okay, because I wasn't going to quit. I wasn't coming back home as a failure. I was going to do whatever I had to do. So the reality, though, what we were actually doing began to sink in when, one, the targets were still like a person. 2, you learn, where you should be shooting. But we did attacked a machine gun nest. You're under live fire. I met an ad, which was pretty stinking scary. And so they're shooting live rounds. You're looping bound, and you attack the nest, and you take out a machine gun bunker. That's crazy. But as we're doing that, I realized we really were training to do these things. Now, at that time, women were not in combat, but they were in combat support. But if you hear anything from the women who served in the WACs in the Vietnam era, there's the front lines and combat lines are off blurred. But anyhow, our roles were changing. And to be a part of that was pretty amazing because, as I said, I came into unit, was one of the first women, and you learn to do things. But basic training, I was scared to death. Anybody who said I was scared to death, go. I didn't know what I was doing. But it taught me confidence because every time you did something you didn't think you could do, you got a little more confident. And you understood that. I learned to understand, don't quit. You don't have to be the best. You don't have to, but you just don't quit, and somehow you find a way through it. And so that was an awesome experience.
One of the amazing stories about Sergeant Smith here is that, she goes into the Army when she's 18 years old. She serves 13 years, and then she decides she's going to get out and she's going to live what we say a family life, a civilian life. Well, at 48 years old, she got a call, and she re-enlisted in the Army. at 48 years old, which is unheard of. She is my sister-in-law, but I admire her so much for her dedication to the service. But when she came to the family and she told us that she was going back into the military, she said, "You're having a midlife crisis. Take a trip, buy a car, but don't go."
Yeah.
But knowing her that I do, that the love for the love for her service of this country, the pride she has for America, just really just stood out to her, and she went back in. So let's talk about not going in the 70s, but then re-enlisting when you're 48, and what that experience for you was like.
That first off, that's not a tip. But most people are not able to do that. Wouldn't have the opportunity. But because I had served so long on active duty, the Army used their math and said, "Oh, we'll subtract that from your age, the 13 plus years." And magically, you are 34 in a 48-year-old body. Welcome to the
Yes.
And oh, by the way, you're going to go through basic training again, which I thought, I must be crazy.
Yeah.
So the Army, of course, is very thorough about everything. I went back through MEPS just like a brand new trainee. I'd have to show up. They made, and anyone who's been in the military, you hear people talk about this, they strip you down to your underwear and make you do all these things to check out your joints and stuff.
Right.
So here's me and the 18 to 22, 25-year-olds stripped down in their underwear, duck walking in a room. These girls are looking at me like, is this old woman? But turns out country living has been good to me. I was healthy and I was able to get in, but I had to go back through basic training. And I had to go back through another school that taught me a new job. And we were fully integrated in the Army, of course, by then. And we were, that was in 2007. So we were active in Iraq and Afghanistan. So combat was a reality, and the reality that's something I knew that would be probably in my future. But it was amazing to go back in. I will say this, the young soldiers, everywhere I went, were always like, "You go, Sergeant Smith." I'd be out there thinking, I'm going to die. I'm just going to quit. And they'd be like, no, you got to keep going. You inspire us. And they inspired me and kept me going. So, but now not everybody thought I should be back in. Most people said I was too old. Most people, when I got to unit, said, we asked for, I had up for Sergeant Major tell me, I asked for combat troops and they sent me you, an old lady. And I deployed with him. So, it was not everybody was happy to see me, but that was okay. Again, never quit and hang in there and endure. And I outlasted all of them and had some wonderful times and met some great people. But I did do a combat deployment.
I do believe that being part of the Appalachian culture does prepare you for a woman to be what I call tougher than some.
Yeah.
And we're not quitters.
No.
We don't give up. We don't give in.
No.
So when somebody typically tells you, you're not going to make it, you're not going to do it, we will do it in spite.
Yes.
We will do it in spite. So along with you being in the military 9 more years, which to make it 22 years.
Yes.
And she retired in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But she didn't just leave it there. One of the next things that she did was, when she retired and she got bored sitting at home, she's done some mission work, but she decided to do some substitute teaching through our local school system here in Jackson County, and began work in the school itself with the Jackson County ROTC program with Colonel Whitaker. So tell us about, in our area, we're a small community.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows everybody.
Yes, they do.
So what it's like, you walking in to the high school for this program, you wearing a uniform, a military uniform, how even the women and the men see you in that role coming into that, how the students and the staff see you, and the impact that you're making and that you've made, and you still do it today because I know students still keep up with you. The impact that you've made on their lives and showing students, that there's a whole new world out there. There's different things that you could absolutely do, anything you set your mind to, as long as you have the drive to do it. So talk about the JROTC program here.
Sure. I didn't know anything about junior ROTC, and when I came back when I retired, we decided to retire here and come back, be close to family. Anyhow, Colonel Whitaker called me and said, he and I went to high school together. So I'd ran into him and said, do you ever need any help doing something? I'm retired back here. I'll be glad to help you out. And he said, can you come and help me for a couple of weeks while we find, school's getting ready to start, while we find a replacement sergeant, because mine got an opportunity he couldn't turn down, and school's getting ready to start. And I was like, dude, I didn't like my kids when they were teenagers, and the last thing I want to do is be around a bunch of teenagers, but I'll come help you out. I'll come help you out for sure. I'll help you out for a few weeks. Well, 5 years later, I finally left the program. I got there, and one of the things I discovered right before I left the Army, I was an AIT platoon sergeant, which meant I helped train the young soldiers right after basic training, teaching them their new jobs and so on. So I had worked with that younger group. But when I started with our ROTC kids, first off, when I walked in the building, I will just tell you, everybody stopped and stared. Somebody once referred to me as a unicorn. We heard about you, women in the military, but we'd never seen one. I was the first woman in this area. And then I discovered I was one of maybe two women eventually in the whole region who were high school ROTC instructors. So the first thing that happened is I came in, and the students, and high school students are brutal. They are a brutal group. They were like, yeah, but you weren't in the Army that Colonel Whitaker was in. Colonel Whitaker, a combat veteran, highly decorated, deployments in Iraq, multiple deployments, and very well respected. Just a super good guy. And I come in, and they said, yeah, but you weren't in the Army he was in. And I was in my ACUs, my combat or camouflage uniform. I have a combat patch too. And I turned and I said, do you see, he's taught you about the uniform, and they don't learn about the uniform. And I said, do you see, I have a combat patch too. And I said, how do you think I got that? And so I opened up a whole lot of things and conversations. But it was eye-opening for everybody because, again, I was just something totally new. There's only 16% of the women, 16% of the force in the Army are women. Less than 10% of the population at large can go into any military service. So we're already a minority group within a minority group. But probably one of the things that was the biggest. And they said, well, we're talking about what you want to do, trying to get them to think of goals and things. And JROTC program is wonderful for high school kids and junior high. Talking about what they're going to do with their life, helping them to see goals. They were, they're like, yeah, but you don't understand, Sergeant. You're not from here. And I started laughing. I said, yes, I am. I'm from here. I'm from the poor part of the county. I'm just like the rest of you. I said, in fact, my family name is Isaacs, which is well known here. So that tells you right there we don't have a lot of money. And asks me a country, asks me a place, and I'll tell you whether I've been there or not. And I have been most of the places you're going to say. And I said, I'm proof. There's nothing special about me. It's about determination and using what you have. And so, but I would just one point thing I wanted to say, I thought, okay, this is, it's, I did it for the last 5 years. I had some of the girls come up to me and say, we didn't know that we could do it all, that we could be a wife, a mother, I'm a grandmother, and have a career and travel and do those things. They said, we thought we had to pick and choose. And they said, but, we see now. And again, like I said, there's nothing special about me. Nothing special. I'm Jane Average. I was Jane Average and everything else.
I don't believe that. I know, I don't believe that, but I understand what you're saying.
But that was so good to be able to give share that with them and be someone tangible that they could see and be a part of that. And I'm forever grateful for that with those kids.
I think that it's been good with the program to me to see you in that program because, like, inspiring young women to maybe go to college that wouldn't even go to college, to step out of the county, out of the state, maybe take a vacation, touch their feet in the sand.
Sure.
Inspire the young men to stand up and be men in a time where everything's so controversial, everything's questioned, everybody's offended.
Yeah.
But to get back to the basics and to your roots and grow and extend upon those roots and make yourself stronger.
Yeah. I've been a soldier for 22 years, but I was always a woman, and that never changed. That had no bearing on doing the job that I needed to. That I did. We just, as a woman, we want to be respected, but you earn the respect and you give the respect that's earned too. So, but and for the guys that were there, just to see in another role, just to start thinking different ways about that. So I think that was really helpful, and it was helpful for them to be around a couple of veterans. One of the things I learned with the kids, and especially when I've been in with the younger kids, because we did stuff in the middle school and elementary school, some of the kids don't know what they want to thank veterans, but they don't know what to say or do. And some of them are actually almost a little scared because they've heard we all have PTSD and think we're all going to lose our minds. Well, some of us were already crazy, so PTSD is not a big issue.
The military range, yeah.
The military gave me some definition there, so. But.
Yeah. Okay, well, how do you feel like, you being in the military, starting in the 70s and then re-enlisting like you did, through your career, how do you think that it made an impact on women going into the military today? Because somebody had to set those cornerstones. Mm-hmm. Somebody had to be first. It's like you're talking about changing from when in the beginning when they did your push-ups on your knees to say, well, no, you're going to do it just like the men do. You're going to do a regular push-up. How do you think the impact that you had back then affects the women going into the military today?
I'm grateful for the women that went before me and started clearing the path, because there's some hard lines that had to be crossed for people to get used to us being there and to see what we could do. And I'm grateful to have been a part of, like I said, that was one of the proudest days of my life. And I can say for all the other that we're thinking, when we took off that Palace of Athena brass off of our uniform that clearly separated us and put on the U.S. Army, just like all the other soldiers, because we were just other soldiers. And moving forward, when I went back in, being in combat support, we had to be in combat support roles. And everybody saw there then the things we could do. And as the Army becomes and military more and more technologically driven, it's like everything else in the world, I began to see that women can do all sorts of things. I worked in aviation for the last few years. I was in aviation units. Women pilots, those cockpits and stuff are designed for smaller people with little feet. The skill sets are different. And to understand that we're different, but we all have roles to play and to the value of everyone that's there. And everybody does their job. You do your job. You do your job, you'll get respected. You don't do your job, you won't. And you don't deserve it if you don't. And our country, again, I've had the privilege of traveling all over. I've been in China, Korea, South Korea, of course, Japan, Germany. I've been in some humanitarian aid stuff in Africa. We have a lot of things wrong in our country, but we have so much that's right. And you can literally be a little girl from the hills of Appalachia, and then you can be anything you want to be in this country. And that's what's awesome about it. And it's truth. It's truth that we can be. I met the president. I met President Obama. He came to Bagram. And regardless of your politics, what president is our commander-in-chief.
You respect this.
You respect that individual. But he came through, and it was very, very early on, and he was shaking the hands. So he spoke, and then he shook the hands of the soldiers and came around. And I will just tell you to know that we represent, our country and the impact we have on the world. And, I never in my wildest dreams would ever thought that would be. And he was incredibly warm and very down to earth. And he shook our hands and thanked us and spent a lot of time with the soldiers, because early on he really appreciated who we were and what we were doing.
I think that women playing roles in the military, women by nature are curious. Mm-hmm. We're curious creatures. We want to know the details and things like that. I think in certain positions in the military, those become more beneficial because we see the details where we want to investigate, right, and things like that. That, to me, helps in everything you do in life. But in certain roles in the military, I do believe that kind of shines. You can spot like that. Okay, so when you left the military and you come back home here, and you started your civilian life here. Let's talk about when how people perceived you, civilians like me who you've only seen the military on TV, or you've seen somebody wearing a veteran's cap, or you've seen recruiting centers.
Right.
How, when, men, we typically can recognize, we'll say, okay, he's got a cap on, he served in Vietnam, he was in the Korean War, he was in Desert Storm. Women typically don't wear caps. So it's like recognizing women today, how you've been part of the military, you served 22 years, how, people see you, and it's like this coming week, the Barley Mule, we're going to be doing this event called, it's Cater Empower Her. It's a veterans retreat, but it's for women veterans.
I'm Phyllis Abbott. I am the founder and director of Lady Veterans Connect, and feel privileged to host this event here this weekend for women veterans, for connection and support and learning more about how they can be successful in their lives. And got a great chef.
My name is Julie Lesko, and I am a veteran of the United States Army. I served for 8 years. I was patrol and laboratory specialist, so I tested fuel for aviations.
I'm Paige Wolf. I am a veteran of the U.S. Navy. I was a YN3. I served at the Naval Amphibious Base Coronado. I was assistant to the CO and XO of the base. I served during Desert Shield, Desert Storm. Loved it. Wished I'd have stayed in.
My name is Sherry Hostler. I am a U.S. Army veteran. I was a Russian linguist stationed in Hawaii during my service. I did join for college money, and I did get my degree after I got out of the military. I did serve during Desert Storm, and I currently work for Lady Veterans Connect as a volunteer, and just happy to be here.
I'm Sarah, and I am a facilitator here with this retreat this weekend, and I'm very excited to be here. I'm Kimberly Riggs. I am the artist, so I'm going to be running a paint thing tomorrow, and yeah, it's going to be fun.
Early, U.S. Air Force veteran of 8 years, first female fighter jet mechanic on the flight line when I went in. Enjoyed my job. I'm a resident here at Lady Veterans Connect. Most awesome place to be. My mansion on the hill, correct? I've been here just under a year, so I'm about to get ready to move out and find an apartment of my own here in Winchester. Can't wait to come back and help out.
I'm Sharon Bernand, and I am here as part of Olive Branch Wellness, and my daughter and I, Tori, who unfortunately couldn't be here this weekend, have put together the Weekend for the Women. We've done it last year, and something that we really love to bring to people so that they're empowered and successful in life and have connection and support.
Hi, I'm Tracy. I am a U.S. Army veteran, served for 3 years, stationed in Hawaii. I'm very looking forward to this retreat. I've already done some paintings and just very thankful to be here.
Hi, guys. I'm Whitney Wise, and I am here at Lady Veterans Connect this weekend and at the Empower Her retreat. And I am so grateful as a military Army wife and Army mom to be here. And this is my way of giving back to my community, serving with them, with these ladies, and also in other ways of my veteran community. I'm just grateful and honored to be here to learn from these women, be with them, and these awesome chefs. We are just so grateful.
Hi, my name is Leah Thlau. I attended Morehead State University. While there, I was the very first female battalion commander, cadet battalion commander, and you can still go there today and see my picture in the ROTC department. And as far as I know, it's still a record. I was commissioned at the same time that I graduated, and I went into the field artillery in 1985, which was a time where there weren't that many females in the field artillery. In fact, I was the only female in my class at Fort Sill. I was stationed at Aschaffenburg, Germany, and began as a recon survey platoon leader, where we surveyed in by hand nuclear missile firing points. Because we didn't have GPS then that you could hold in your hand. It was contained inside a Jeep. After that, I moved on to be the battalion adjutant, the S1Es, and finished my active duty of time there in Schaffenburg, and then spent the remainder of my service until 1998 in the individual ready reserve, meaning that I was ready to be deployed at any time. So that's my story.
Being recognized for your service, you know, if you're around somebody who's been in the military, you can kind of start picking people out that you know has been in the military. But regular everyday citizens that you pass by at the grocery store, department store, that you see maybe in your church community, they typically don't know today in 2025 that you as a woman that served in the military for 22 years and how that's a great thing in that it's showing these people when you're a civilian, hey, I'm a veteran. I served, and I served greatly for my country.
It is different for female veterans. One, most veterans organizations are geared toward men because the majority are men. You know, like I said, we're only 16% of the military population, and that's a bigger number than it used to be. And there are smaller groups of us. There are fewer things that are available. Just some of them, not that they mean to be exclude women. It's just that it's geared toward the men because that's who they are. And
the majority.
Other male veterans. So it's great that groups like Empower Her and the female veterans groups are beginning to come about. And I hope that there'll be more of those. That was one of the things, one of the things you miss coming out of the military is you're part of a group, a team. You have a brotherhood. And I use the word brotherhood. I've been called brother more times. And it never offended me. It's talking about the closeness, the closeness that we are. So we miss that. And women, we have a tendency to go on about our lives and kind of isolate ourselves, and that's ungood for us to do that. So I always tell people when they say, or about, no one knew I was a woman veteran and this and this and this. They didn't assume that I was. And nobody should. Why would they? I always tell them, I don't judge people, and I don't react to that. It's what they do after I say, well, I served, and then you have the conversation. Other male veterans and stuff, sometimes they'll recognize or they'll ask me after a period of time. We have a certain demeanor about us, a certain, there's just something, we're just a little different, I guess. But they don't expect to see that. So it is good to see people wanting to recognize that. And I really appreciate that, that you have always supported me from the day one, even when you thought it was crazy.
We did send care packages.
Absolutely. Yeah, you sent me bourbon ball candy. I was the favorite person in my whole unit because of that.
That's one of the things that we did that with people or with you in the military was that send enough so that you could share it around.
Absolutely.
And so everybody got the chance to have a little bit of home when you're there. So, it's like I say, tell me, one of the things is that, spending that many years in the military, to me, a person can never separate the difference between a soldier and being a civilian. But what do you think that when you were in the military, what do you think that taught you about yourself?
Well, one of the things I know is that it taught me to boil things down to what's really important about something if you're trying to do, in other words, what's important to me in my life. Because one of the things in the military, you give up a lot of things. You give up freedoms, you make choices, you move to work very hard for the things that are important in my life, the people that are important to me. You don't take things for granted. It taught me that, again, persevering. Oftentimes, I was not the best qualified some of the time, but I was the one who hung in there. And so my story, like I said, I'm a completely average person who just persevered on. And everything that happens in your life helps build you to who you are. It makes you, there's a lesson in everything. It makes you who you are. There are some things that I know I have to sometimes tell people. I see someone looking at me and think, oh, that's a little harsh. Well, it's not meant to be harsh. It's just you learn to be very matter of fact. Or they're like, that's a little loud. Well, I led 60 to 150 troops. and they all had to hear this voice. So, but it makes you a better citizen too,
Yeah.
And when you see other countries that don't have what we have, again, I'm a patriot to the core. I love my country to the core because when I was in Afghanistan and I saw those little girls in the hijabs and they're staring staring across the fence at us, and I would just say, I hope that they realize that one day maybe they would be where they could have the options that we had and be whatever they wanted to be. And they were in a country where they cannot be. Yeah. So it makes you one, stand up and stand up for that, and two, and you don't quit. I never give up. I have the long haul look at everything too. Yeah. So
one of the things that is always, I thought, from being in the military helped you, and then it become part of me too, was like, we've traveled several places all over this country.
Great adventures, yeah.
And when you've been in the military, you're forced to speak to every culture, every race, every people, and you're with a sense of pride of who you are, whether you're that Appalachian mountain girl, if you was raised in high heels in New York City, that you have that pride about you, but you're able to speak to anyone. And we do that no matter where we go. We always speak to everyone. We're always in the middle of something. Yes. So I think that's one of the great things that come out of being in the military is that accepting differences and cultures and people, learning to love one another and depend upon each other, and not having boundaries or closing your mind off to things, because in that moment, if it ever came to a war circumstance, you have you and the person standing next to you. And at that point, it doesn't matter who or what they are. That's what you have to do.
Yes.
But I mean, it's certainly always been an experience and things like that. And I'm always quick to point out your service and stuff like that, because I mean, that is, I've always admired you for that, stuff like that. And I try to say that without crying.
Appreciate that.
But I mean, it's definitely, but I've also seen a side of you in the military on trips where you're always very familiar with your surroundings, no matter if we're in a crowd, if we're down in Mexico, if we're somewhere, that you can quickly become protective of your tribe. And you will quickly push through that, and it's things that everyday people like me that have never been in the military, have only seen bits and parts of the military, we take for granted all the time. We don't understand truly how protected we are in America, how the women in the military today traveling all across the world, in Afghanistan, Iraq, and all these places, that they're setting an example to the world about women.
Yes.
So those young girls, like you see, that's in the hijabs and they're covered, and the only life they ever have seen, or that they would ever likely have known, is what their culture show them. And you just showed them a whole different world.
Yes.
And that there's possibilities out there. So to me, I mean, women make a great impact in the military. They definitely have roles and purposes that they serve, and the outcome of that is that women, like men in the military, they all have things when there's a changeover between a soldier to a civilian, where some say it's okay. Some have PTSD issues.
Yes.
But it's how they constantly lean on each other, and they have an understanding. You've been with me since you're out, and we work with Winlock's Sucks Foundation out of Anderson, South Carolina. That is Patrick Ellswick. And Patrick has always brought soldiers from around the country to set. Many have sat right here at this table. They sat on our deck.
Love it.
And they've ate. And every single time that they come out, it's like when you go, you blend right in with them. It might be a bunch of guys, and typically it is, because you don't see any women in these kind of scenarios.
Yeah.
But you just start talking the language, and it's a language all your own, and it is a brotherhood. Whether you're a man or woman, it is a brotherhood.
It is.
And you stand together, and it's a comfort and an unspoken thing that's between you all.
Yes.
And it's amazing to watch it. It's amazing to be a part of it. Barley Mule will always have the philanthropy of taking care of veterans. That is one of the things that we do. As this year rolls around, this year we're going to do more veterans events and things like that. We're going to get involved some more. We're going to go to actually South Carolina and sit and do an interview with Patrick himself. And he was a Marine, and talk about his life. We're also going to talk to one of his friends, Rick Atkins, who has been a big part of our life and one of the dear friends of Patrick's, and has been with him through this journey of When Life Sucks Foundation. And talk about Patrick's role in the military, how he saw things, how being in a bit different branch as a Marine.
Right.
You know, where you're in the Air Force, you're in the Army, the National Guard, the Space Force that's out there now.
Oh, yeah.
A Marine, you know, there's all different takes and views on things, and they all have a competitive camaraderie between each other. Like if you're in the military, you see Marines as some way. If you're a Marine, you see the Air Force as some way, and things like that. And but one thing that I think that I absolutely love watching from soldiers or hearing from soldiers is their cadences. And they range so many different varieties.
Oh, yeah. A lot you can't say.
You know, yes, a lot you probably can't say. But it's just fun to hear that, because really that's when you hear that heartbeat.
Yeah.
When you hear that platoon marching together, their heartbeat, and how they're so in sync in their gaits, in their voices, and how they speak.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's a sense of pride here in America. We are very proud for our military, you know, of our law enforcement. We are our first responders, all of those, you know. But our military today speaks for us in protecting us around the world.
Yes.
And we're honored to be able to serve them, especially honored to be able to do this women's retreat, feed these veterans, and get to know this group of women that's in this, and to look at doing another journey with them. You know, so
it's going to be exciting.
You know, I appreciate you being here with me today and sharing your time with me. And, you know, we do this all the time. We talk about quite often about things.
And I'm going to talk about you for just a moment here. You know, she doesn't know I was going to do this, but I'm going to anyway. This is not Linda's first adventure of taking care of veterans and being sensitive to us. She's done things like invited from our community, like the vets that you did the fish fry for and their families. She invited all that wanted to come in our area, 250 people and their families, and she cooked and fed them, because that's what she does, the hospitality. And then putting together those care packages for the vets at the VA, and taking some of my students, high school cadets, to get to actually see and interact. But you've done some, and the things that you've done for the homeless veterans with the packages, the survival packages. I just want to say thank you for that. Love you.
Yeah, so see. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us today on Cook's Canvas. We'll see you next time.